Let's bring in Michael Graham and Steve Chaggaris in Washington. Michael is creative director of MediaDC, which publishes the Washington Examiner, the Weekly Standard, and Red Alert Politics. And Steve is our CBS News senior political editor. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Let's start with this. A spokesman for House Speaker Paul Ryan says that it's Nunes' choice whether to recuse himself. So does anyone really have leverage at this point to force Nunes out of his role in the investigation? Steve, I'll start with you.
I think the only person would really be Speaker Ryan, but Ryan's right. Nunes has to make that choice. But really, the calls are coming mainly from Democrats. They're coming from the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Nunes' Democratic counterpart on the committee, and they're looking at these as partisan calls. It's interesting. The House Intelligence Committee, in fact, both intelligence committees on the House and Senate side, used to be insulated from this sort of hyper-partisanship, and I think that's crept into everything we're seeing in Washington these days, and now including what's going on with the House Intelligence Committee. So I think as long as Democrats are the ones making these calls for him to step aside on this, I don't think you're going to see any action on from these Republicans.
Michael, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting who has the leverage to cause him to push him out, to get him out of this spot. I'm waiting for someone to show me, what did he do wrong? Do we have some evidence of actual wrongdoing? He says that he went to a skiff at the White House because it was executive information that was not available at the legislative branch. We do have 3 different branches of government. So that's his story. Eli Lake, who's a reporter I respect at Bloomberg, and Steve Hayes, a reporter I respect at our own Weekly Standard, know Nunes and talk about how he's been kind of his own, his own detective. He goes out and digs past just the stuff that's handed to people in his job by the Intelligence Committee. It could be the case that this was some secret plot with Donald Trump and he got the stuff from Paul Manafort along with a great recipe for borscht. That could all be true, but hey, how about some evidence? To me, the key line that jumped out at me was Wolf Blitzer saying to him, don't you see how this could look bad? Okay, well, it looks bad, but how about being bad? And that's been this story on both sides. The allegations about the Obama administration passing out raw intelligence and the allegations about Russia stealing the election with Trump. Lots of allegations, and I keep waiting for something like facts.
All right, well, let's talk about the Senate Intelligence Committee. It's conducting its own probe into Russian election interference, and we learned Monday that a close aide to the president will be answering questions in front of that committee. Let's get more on that from our Major Garrett, and then we'll discuss.
There were 2 important revelations today involving the still ongoing congressional investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election and possible Trump transition, Trump campaign, or Trump White House involvement. Jared Kushner, son-in-law to President Trump, married to daughter Ivanka, and a senior advisor within this White House, has agreed to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee. And one of the things that committee is interested in is a December meeting that Kushner took with a prominent official from a bank known as VEB, a development bank in Russia that has a reputation of being involved in and sympathetic to Russian security agencies and Russian spying. I had a chance to talk in general terms with White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer about Kushner's testimony before the Intelligence Committee and some of the meetings he took during the Trump transition.
So throughout the campaign and the transition, Jared served as the official primary point of contact with foreign governments and officials until we had State Department officials up.
And that was at the president-elect's request.
That's correct. And so given this role, he volunteered to speak with Chairman Burr's committee, but has not received any confirmation regarding a time for a meeting or anything.
And so he doesn't believe he owes the American public an explanation about
For what,
these.
doing his job?
I'm just asking.
But you're acting as though there's something nefarious about doing what he was actually tasked to do.
Well, it's not every day that someone in a senior position like Jared volunteers to go talk to the Senate Intelligence Committee about an investigation dealing with meddling by a foreign power in the American election.
And I think based on the media frenzy around this,
I'm just asking you.
And I'm answering it. And I'm just saying to you that based on the media frenzy that existed around this, he volunteered to make sure that he said, hey, we've made some contacts. I'd be glad to explain them. Let me know if you'd like to talk. Plain and simple.
We had a chance to talk to Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he said it's not clear yet, and the committee hasn't decided whether Kushner's testimony to that committee will be given in public or under oath. He also offered no opinion on White House explanations that Kushner's involvement with the Russians during the transition was strictly routine. Elaine?
All right, our Major Garrett there. So Jared Kushner would be the closest person to the president to be called upon in this investigation. Steve, how significant is that?
Well, so there's Kushner, and then there's also former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, who's going to eventually talk to the committee. It's a growing list of people who were in Trump's orbit, who had contacts with Russians. And as this committee investigates what the extent of Russian meddling was and whether there's any connection to Trump, they're going to bring these people in and ask them a lot of questions. Now, I guess my question with the Kushner part of this is, knowing full well the heat that Trump and his orbit was taking on the Russia issue, why they agreed to have multiple meetings with Russians in December of 2016 is just, it has me scratching my head, because, once this gets out, people are just going to raise questions. It could be completely innocent, but it just doesn't look good given all the stuff swirling around Trump at the time. I was talking to some folks in town today, a couple of Republicans, who suggested there could be one of two things going on here. One, this could all come out and there is collusion and connection between the Trump administration and Russia, or really it could just be it's sort of Keystone Cops, and you just got a bunch of people who are in Trump's orbit who really don't understand what the meaning or what the interpretation of these meetings could be and what this all means overall. And there are some people who think it might be the latter, that it's just a bunch of people that don't really understand how Washington works and how these theories just sort of grow.
Michael, what do you think? Because I know there are still obviously a lot of open questions, and based on the last question, you're one of them that has many questions about whether or not there's anything factual that has been proven at this point, and the answer is we just don't know. But as Steve points out, when you talk about sort of this growing list of folks, doesn't that raise even more questions about the extent of whatever kind of communications there may have been with Trump associates and Russian officials?
I've long been on the theory that it's the Keystone Cops that Steve just described. I mean, if a possible answer is really stupid people, that's generally a good way to bet. But there's another layer here and that Trump needs to address, which is he's got a bunch of shady people around him. And, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, I'm not saying that they're criminals or that they're Russian spies, but they swim in the waters where you run across sanctioned bankers and, Russian autocrats with connections to the Russian intelligence community. And if you're going to surround yourself with people like that, you're going to have these problems. And Steve made a very good point. How can you, as a politician, thinking about, your position, how people see you, not realize, particularly when Trump stunned himself and won the election, hey, I've got this Russian problem. I'm going to tell everybody, just stay away from Russia. Let's take a 3-month break and just no Russia stuff. But they didn't do that. And is it because arrogance, incompetence, both? They're all good bets.
All right. Meantime, Michael, let me ask you. Axios is reporting that the Trump administration is looking at putting forward a tax reform bill and infrastructure package at the same time. Now, it's been just a few days since the Republican healthcare overhaul was pulled. What do you think about this? Is this potentially just a trial balloon that's being floated here, or could there be a strategy in trying to push two initiatives at the very same time?
The Trump White House with a strategy? Hey, first time for everything. It can happen. The strategy, actually, it's the same strategy on both sides. We could either take the tax issue and throw lots of money at it and drive up the debt, or we could take infrastructure and throw a lot of money at it and drive up the debt. I predict that in the end, President Trump will support throwing money at both.
All right, Steve, let me ask you. Jared Kushner was also in the news because he got a new title in the White House. He's going to oversee what some aides call a SWAT team to overhaul the federal bureaucracy. How should we understand, Steve, the function of this quote-unquote SWAT team?
Well, let's also remember that this isn't the first SWAT team that a president has sort of put in to make the government more efficient. Bill Clinton did it in 1993, let Al Gore loose on that. Barack Obama did it in 2009. In fact, I think Obama called it a SWAT team as well in 2009. So this isn't the first time this is going to happen. We have to understand the government, the federal government has 2 million employees. This isn't it's a pretty big beast to tame. I think what has some people worried, at least in the public service area, is that they think that this is sort of an invitation to privatize some of the agencies. There's talk about the VA, for instance, becoming more privatized. And there's a concern among federal government workers that perhaps this is Trump's entry into starting to privatize some of these government services.
Meantime, Michael Kushner already has a role in White House personnel, foreign and domestic policy. How should we understand his role in the president's inner circle, you think?
He's got a role. Ivanka has a role. The kids have a, it's like that great Republican Mayor Daley said, if you can't trust family, who can you trust? Wait, he wasn't a Republican? But these are people that President Trump is comfortable with. And trust is such a key thing. When you are surrounded by political enemies, having somebody that you know has got your back is incredibly valuable. And Jared Kushner is apparently, based on what I've seen during the campaign, someone that Trump again and again felt like he can trust.
All right, Michael Graham and Steve Chaggaris in Washington. Gentlemen, great to have you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.